Now, irrespective of if Tibet belongs to China or does not belong to China, or is recognized by China or not recognized by the rest of the world as an independent country or not, or even irrespective of if the majority of Tibetans want to be part of China or not, right? The bottom line is, in 75 years of history, 6,000 monasteries have been destroyed and about 1.2 million Tibetans have been killed. This is more people that have been killed in Tibet than Palestinians by Israel. This is a big deal, right? And in terms of managing what you call the separatist movement in Xinjiang, wouldn't a better way be to sort of put out an olive branch and allow people their identity, allow people their ideas, and sort of allow the people in Xinjiang to be part of this amazing sort of economic development that has been through China, instead of sort of alienating them, calling them terrorists, which honestly just sounds like something out of a Washington playbook and an Israeli playbook, and it's like it's typical empire thinking and imperial thinking. There's terrorists out there. They're trying to assert independence, and we're going to go and crush them. Aren't there better ways, for China to think about these issues than we are one China and we will suppress anything that we think is not sort of aligning with that policy?
YouTube ミュージックアプリならいろんなリミックスが見つかります。こんなリミックスも、そんなリミックスも、あんなリミックスも。
Again, with due respect to you, let me differ with you in very significant ways. And let's talk about what you mentioned in three categories, one by one. Taiwan. Taiwan will never be able to be an independent country. And if you do not believe me, just look at what former President Abraham Lincoln did to the Confederation after they declared independence from the Union. President Lincoln launched a war to reclaim the southern states and to force them back into the Confederation. It is not war of aggression. It is not war of occupation of another country. It is the justified war of reunification of the United States to such an extent that ever since the Civil War, the United States has been one nation under God, indivisible. Indivisible. No state can ever declare separation from the Union, because even if, let's say, 100% of the people in California want to be independent, that will not turn California into an independent state, because you need to go through a very complicated, almost a very impossible process to make sure that any single state will be able to be independent from the Union. Now, if the United States is one country, indivisible, why should you ever expect that China should be one country divisible? China will never be divisible. China will never allow any division of any part of its territory from China, whether it is Taiwan or Tibet or Xinjiang. Talked about Tibet. Tibet is very different. Tibet practiced Tibetan Buddhism. Most of the Chinese people, we follow Chinese Buddhism. Now, Tibetan Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism are very more common rather than different. And many people, including me, I go to Tibetan temples to worship, actually. In addition to the Chinese Buddhist temples, we have no problem in embracing each other, not only as brothers and sisters, but also the believers in the same faith of Buddhism. So what is wrong between China and Tibet, or the Han Chinese people like me with Tibetan brothers and sisters? We don't have fundamental problems. I think the problem, if any, was that some forces back in the 1950s wanted to really urge some ruling classes in Tibet try to break away from China. It stopped in 1959. It will never be allowed to resurrect, for example, and anyone inside China or outside China promoting or advocating for the independence of Tibet will be mooted before they really come into...
What does muted mean?
Pardon me?
You said they'll be muted. What does muted mean?
Muted mean they will never carry any weight. They can talk about it.
It also means that people are also muted by...
They can never really create a ripple in China. They can never create any ripple.
But Victor, muted has also traditionally meant being disappeared, being killed, being imprisoned, being tortured. Muted also meant that, right? And is that really the best way to deal with these issues?
Well, I think you can indulge in all these false accusations, but you need to come up with real evidence. If you can come up with real evidence,
there's been reports
come
after
to me.
reports for decades.
Now, I can help you to clarify that. But if you cannot come up with real evidence,
Victor,
false accusation,
Victor,
without
you see, I think
satisfying the burden of proof is not a worthwhile thing to be engaged in.
No, look, I think we're trying to have an honest discussion, and I do think that there's so much that the world can understand from China and learn from China and appreciate China, right? But I mean, the premise of that is that both parties kind of have to be looking honest at themselves. And obviously, I'm just having a conversation with you, not representing the world or anything of that sort, but just try to help me understand, right? So I've read report after report from independent organizations whose reporting I trust when it comes to them reporting about Abu Ghraib or Guantanamo Bay or Israel, Palestine, or even in South Africa, anywhere. I trust their reporting, right? I do look at their reporting. I've been doing it for 20 years. I do approach it critically, but I trust their reporting. So those same organizations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, there are others, say that horrible things have been happening historically, and presently, extremely horrible things are happening in Xinjiang and have been occurring for the last 7 or 8 years, right? Now, I think there's a way to approach it to say nothing bad is happening, and no one's going to take that seriously, right? I mean, no one who's looking at this from the outside is going to say nothing bad's happening. Maybe try to contextualize it. Maybe try to say there are better approaches. Maybe the Chinese state have not dealt with this in the smartest way, and the world is changing. I mean, but just denial is just it's gonna create mistrust, because I think the world is looking for China, towards China as an entity that they want to trust, because there is a lot of there's a lack of moral leadership in the world right now. What's your response to that?
Sir, it is not denial. It is reinformation of the realities on the ground.
So may I ask you?
Do not believe what I do. If you do not believe what I tell you, then try to figure out how to go to Xinjiang for a real visit. You can do an investigation by yourself. I'll be very happy to help you if you really want to do that.
Would I really be able to go to Xinjiang or send teams to people of Xinjiang
I hope so.
and without interference of the Chinese government and no minders? I mean, this is a conversation that you had many times, and it's always the same retort.
No, allow me to mention, if you do visit Xinjiang, your mind will be blown away. You will see a completely different Xinjiang than what you prejudiced against. People in Xinjiang live in harmony, and most of the people there are very, very eager to support the government's policy against terrorism.
Would you deny that hundreds of thousands of people, if we use the lowest estimates, have been put in detention camps?
How can that be possible? I travel throughout the corners of Xinjiang.
The Chinese officials who run the state have said that. They've said we've interned 540,000 people, not Human Rights Watch. The Chinese state officials who manage the state, this is their number. 540,000 people have put in internment camps.
No. You misread the Chinese reports. You need to do better homework. And I hope you will apply a lot of scholarship and seriousness and professionalism in whatever data you read about. And I can assure you, with all my sincerity and professionalism and academic achievements, that what you mentioned is completely against the realities on the ground in Xinjiang.
I wish one day I can visit Xinjiang, and I'd like to understand the truth.
I hope so. Sooner the better.
But I do think 100%, I agree. Sooner the better. I do think we're not gonna be. We're definitely not gonna agree on this. But just when it comes to Human Rights Watch and their reports and Amnesty International reports, do you believe their reports on Gaza? Do you believe their reports in other places of the world? What's your thoughts on Israel's atrocities in Gaza?
Listen, China firmly condemns the Israeli atrocities against the people in Gaza. The reality is that China is